Okay, so let's dive straight into this, and I've got the image sketched on here already for my composition because I didn't really want you guys to have to sit through me doing that. But I'll show you a little bit of information about it, and I want to show you a couple things, and mainly because someone had asked this. So here we can see the screen size and the print size, and in ArtRage it's always pixels per inch, okay? And it can be measured, you see it measured in inches, measured in pixels, so forth. So the screen size is 2000 pixels by 1600 pixels, and that's 100 pixels per inch. Now I've got this set lower. Normally I work around 300 or so, but when I'm recording, that can cause issues. So I've got it turned down a little bit there. But I wanted to kind of go over some information just real quick. So pardon me while I geek out for a second and explain something, because I had somebody specifically ask this. So let's say that I am wanting to get this done up to print. Okay, and I'm looking at PPI, which is pixels per inch, and most printers will talk about DPI, dots per inch. All right, and so they're going to discuss those two things. Now there is a bit of a difference in them. Okay, so PPI describes the resolution in pixels of a digital image, whereas DPI describes the amount of ink dots on a printed image. So, and a lot of times people use them back and forth, but that's not really accurate. Okay, you can have a high pixel count and get a much sharper, more interesting digital image, and usually right around 100 it tends to be just fine for a image that you're looking at on the screen. Some people will do them larger, like if they're doing a larger digital, you know, like renderings and stuff like that, movies and all that, they render at a much higher resolution. 300 PPI is kind of the standard for really high pixel count. And you know, usually working like 4000 by 6000 pixels per inch, or pixels image size, is considered to what most people would do for a high-res image. Low-res image, think of like pixel art, you know, like the old Mario Brothers and stuff like that, where you have a lower PPI, and so you're getting closer to pixel art. And so if you want something to look really crisp and clean on a screen, you would be more worried about PPI. Okay, so how many pixels there are per inch. So here, for every 1 inch, there will be 100 pixels, which again is usually just fine for a digital image. DPI, or dots per inch, refers to the resolution value of a physical printer, okay, because you got to remember that printing is usually done with CMYK, which is cyan, magenta, yellow, and key, which is really black, color models. So when you print something, and if you look in it real close, you're going to see how many dots of red, green, blue, and black are on the paper, and that's what's going to make up your image and give you a clean, crisp image when you're doing DPI. Now, DPI can change depending on the printer. Some printers can print really nice, quality-looking stuff at 85 DPI because they have the ink that they use has such a saturation. Others, it's like 1200 DPI. I usually print, just for ease, because I found it works. When I usually print at 300 DPI, so I usually just go with 300 in here, and it kind of matches up. You know, I've had issues here and there occasionally, but the printer I use now, it works out just fine. So if you're going to print any of your paintings, check with your printer. Say, hey, what's the good DPI for me to be working at? And then set your canvas up that way to do that. So that's kind of the difference between PPI and DPI. So basically it's dots per inch or pixels per inch. And it really only matters if you're going to be doing prints and stuff like that. So anyway, but I just wanted to show you that here. So this I have at 2000 by 1600, 100 pixels per inch, or basically the print size would be 20 by 16 at 100 pixels. So it would be an okay resolution. That's why I normally kick it up to 300. So, but that's what this is. So I just wanted to show you that real quick. and kind of explain it. So I have this laid out here for what I'm planning to do, and I'm going to do kind of a path going back that kind of meanders back through. So the composition, it pulls you into there, maybe a little stream over here, some canopy from trees, and atmospheric perspective back there. I'm even kind of toying around with the idea of putting something here to have a little extra area of interest, but I may just do that with lighting more than anything else. So anyway, so this is kind of the layout and the composition I'm going to go with, and I'm going to try and stay with a fairly tight palette to use, and I'll share that as well in there. But so the other reason I'm doing this painting here is because I recently put some of my stencils on Gumroad, and if you haven't checked that out, the link is down in the description, so make sure to use that. I have it set up to where it's free. You can name your own price, basically, anywhere from $0 on up, and if you can throw a little bit my way, that'd be fantastic, because it helps support the channel and makes it a little bit easier to make more of these things. But if you can't afford it, because I know everything that's going on right now, people are having money issues and stuff, so that's fine too. That's why I wanted to make it that way. But anyway, so I wanted to show you how to use those stencils. So I have them right here, and I have them set up so that I can use them and just kind of walk you through. Some of them I'm not going to use the way you would expect, but these are pretty much hand-painted stencils that I made, and everything from ocean wave foams to landscape, backgrounds and stuff like that, sticks and all that kind of stuff too. So there's even some pebble ones that I made there. Anyway, so I have these stencils. I'm going to show you how to use those. So I'm going to put this off screen. I have a couple monitors going here so I can kind of keep my working area clean. And I'll show you how to use some of those and how to kind of alter their use as well. But there's also another bonus tip I want to give you. So if you can stick around for that, I'll show you a bonus tip on how to use some of the stencils to get even more mileage out of them, so you can get kind of double use out of them for stuff. So I'm going to show you that here in just a little bit. But for right now, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to, I've got one layer here with my composition. I'm going to go ahead and create another layer. I may go ahead and put it below it and turn this one down just a little bit, so that way I kind of have a hint of it and I can be painting under it as I'm going. So one of the other things I like to do on occasion is just put it to multiply, so that way I really can still kind of keep seeing my composition under here. And I think I'm going to jump over to the sticker spray and look at some of the presets here. So there are some good brushes in here that you have, like the bristle, wet, and crosshatch, and so forth. Some of these work pretty good. So I'm thinking about using some of these, or I may even use some of the custom brushes as well. And they have some artistic ones up here, so like this bristle and stuff here. So if you ever use Procreate, these are pretty close to the oil brushes that you see in Procreate. So I may try them. The one thing with these is using these, I have found that for whatever reason, these cause, if I get to a big brush, these cause some issues with my recording. I don't know if it just sucks up some RAM or something, but anyway. But I'm going to try some of these real quick just to throw in. Actually, I think I'm going to use a different one. I'm going to use these canvas ones down here. And I'm just going to throw in some color. That's all I'm going to do is kind of the underpainting first, because you always want to start with that. And get in just some quick colors. Now I have my color palette chosen already that I have off screen, so you kind of see me go back and forth. Normally I would just tint the canvas here so I can get the feel for what I'm doing, but I'm going to go ahead and lay in some quick color, and because I kind of have that already chosen. So let me do that real quick and let's get started with stuff here. So alright, so I know I'm going to have, like I said, a path going through, and I really want to play around with some of the lighting, and so I'm going to kind of go with this reddish, almost salmon color coming through here, and it'll be kind of coming down and blending. You'll notice I had that green there from where I didn't change my color. I don't care. I want it to kind of blend into it and really play around with the colors. So kind of that, and I'm thinking maybe some off in here and in here as well, and maybe even back here, that we can get some nice kind of color harmony. Now, so color harmony, what that is, to give you an idea, is that's where your colors are repeated throughout your canvas, and so everything kind of blends together and it gives it a nice look and feel. So that's what we're going to try and do here. Right now I'm just trying to get in some of these darker colors. Sorry, my sinus is just set off all of a sudden. And kind of get a feel for where I want everything kind of laid out. And I will come back and start doing details on all this as we're going through. But I'm just trying to get some colors laid in really quick. And I did a thumbnail sketch so I could not spend time trying to get it laid out on here for you guys, but instead I could just focus on painting. Alright, and I think I'm going to put a little bit of this in here. So the plan is, like I said, to maybe put like a stream coming through here, maybe some rocks. I want this to stay a little dark over here because I don't want it to be the main attention draw. I really want it to be kind of more of those things where you just kind of go, oh look, there's a stream kind of thing. And I know I'm going to have it backlit back here. Oops. Right now I'm just trying to fill in color. And kind of get some of that put in here. Like so. As we can see there. And then alright, so we'll have a little bit of sunlight kind of breaking through, maybe through here, and over here a little bit, maybe up through the canopy. So again, just trying to get a quick underpainting on here for where we're going to want to put trees and background stuff and all that. I'll fade it into here, maybe some over here. so kind of getting some of this laid in, and we about have it there. All right. These rocks that I've got right here, I really kind of want them to be kind of some mossy stones. Maybe a patch of grass there. So really just trying to get rid of all this white that was on here. Because now, by doing so, I have bit more of an idea for the atmosphere that I'm looking for. Okay, so now, even though that's very, very, very rough, you can still see an idea of what I'm doing. So this is just a rough sketch. Now I recommend doing that. This is kind of what I did, kind of a repeat of what I did to get the painting idea. Was just kind of blocked in colors real quick, and then what I usually do is zoom out, so almost like you're looking at it from a distance, and see, does that read? Well, it does. It reads that there's a path going through it, that there's something going on over here, you've got kind of a center of interest here in the middle, so I think that'll work for the start. So that's where I recommend starting. I'm going to set this real quick. So I've got it on there, and now that I've got it there, even if I get rid of my lines, I have more of an idea of what I'm painting. Okay, and so now we can really start to play around with some of the colors and using stencils and so forth, and really kind of get an idea of where we're going with everything. Okay, so if you've gotten to this point, good job, and we're going to now start building the layers of the painting as we go through. Excuse me. So let's kind of play around with that a little bit, and put a little bit of a lighter color in here. And by doing these vertical strokes, it's going to kind of give the impression that there's more trees back there, that the path just kind of keeps going, and that the sunlight just kind of burns its way through the canopy. Okay, so we've got, again, this is just that square brush, canvas brush. Alright, so we've got that laid out. Now we can start building upon this even more. So we're going to start working from the background closer and using this as our underpainting, almost like if this was our sky. So I'm going to create a new layer here. I'm going to keep that one hidden for now. And then what I need to work on is really kind of this area back here and pulling this together. So looking at the stencils that I have here from the stencil pack, we've got some options that we could really kind of play around with, one of which being this one. And what we can do is take this and kind of place it back here for where I know I want to have some stuff. So if I want to resize this, I push Control, and you'll see that that little magnifying glass comes in. Okay, so if I push Control, hold it, and then move my mouse to the right, it gets bigger. To the left, it gets smaller. Okay. If I hold Alt, you'll see that little curve arrow comes in there. That means that I can rotate it. Okay, however I want. Right. If I do Shift, well, actually, if I do Spacebar, I can drag it wherever I want. And if I do Shift and Control, I can actually, if I move left, I can squish it. Move right, I can pull it and really kind of change around the stencil. And this is how you can get a lot more from different stencils. Okay, so I can do that. If I want to hide it, then I can just click on it, right click on it, and I can hide the stencil to look at what I'm doing. I can press Control Z and it comes right back. I can do the same thing if I remove the stencil. I can press Control Z. Now, but let's say that you've got a lot of stencils here, you've worked with them, and you've hidden them all. Okay, now what do? Well, you can actually come up to Tools, Stencil Options, and if you had more stencils here, you could do Show All Stencils. Okay, if you had it hidden. So that's how you can kind of play around with those. So one other trick you can do is you can also invert the stencil and then drag it around and get an idea. There's a couple of reasons you would do this. One is it gives me an idea of where I'm placing it. So I can see, okay, this is where these trees are going to live. All right. And I can get an idea of that and say, okay, I kind of like there. All right. Then I can invert it again back to here. And now I can work within this area to get the trees built up. All right. So let's do a little bit of that with this, and I'm going to go with a little bit of the background color. That's this color right here, and I'm still going to keep this canvas one, and I'm going to ever so slightly blend it in like so. I'm on that second layer. Okay. The reason I'm doing that is because that way, if I don't like this, I can always, and I'm pushing, you'll see where it says Alt, that's because I'm selecting the color that's below there. Okay, so I'm trying to work with the colors that's here. And then by coloring in here, I can move it and take a look and see, okay, I've got some trees started there. Now I want these trees back here, and I just did Control Z to put it back. I want these trees to be a little more faded than that. Just kind of a hint of trees. And I'm starting to get that hint there of the trees being back there. Okay. Mainly this part is what I care about. Okay. And this part. This one, not so much. But this part here. So I may even take my eraser, kind of fade this one out of existence. And then I'm going to switch to my palette knife. I'll probably stay with the heavy blurred frosting for now. I'm going to soften that down here and very lightly kind of through here, because I don't want to really see the texture from this part of the stencil, because they're that far back. I just want a hint of it. I wanted there to be enough information for people to know there's trees there. Okay. Now then, we can do some more of it, and I'm going to do a little bit different because I want this to be, helps if you switch back to your brush. Okay. So I kind of have some of that going on there. Let's put it back. Grab a little bit of the color back here. Just kind of lightly give it a little bit of a fade. Like so. Now then, I know some of this just because my composition's there. I can push it back behind where those trees are going to be. Like so. I can grab K for the palette knife. Give these some softening. Just kind of running over it really soft, not letting it linger too much. So again, those are kind of in the background for where they're going to be. Okay, so that's getting some of that kind of done in. But you see here how you have this, and then you have kind of this vertical coming down here. It does give it more of that. There's some trees there. So it's all building layers and building textures. Okay, so we have that there. Okay, now then, I know for this tree in the middle that's kind of right here, and for this here, I'm going to put just a little bit of some of this peachy color. Let me bring that down a little bit. Even switch to my oil brush. And this is the Everlasting Oil, because I can start getting a more defined edge. And grab a little bit of this lighter color, like so. Switching back to K. We're going to smooth this out just slightly. And now that gives me a much more of a hinted vertical tree. Okay. Now I can play around with that a little bit more and use one of my other stencils. So let's say, for example, this old dead tree. I can bring this up here, okay, or this one, but I kind of like the idea of using this one perhaps. Yeah, I'll go with this one. So I'm going to Shift and Control, stretch it because it's kind of a narrow tree. Okay. So that gave me just a little bit more of that wood texture back there. K, back to the palette knife, soften it ever so slightly. Whoops, that was a little too much on the side there. I'm just pulling straight down. Alright, now I have a little bit more knotted wood. I'm going to take this, come back over here to this one. I'm going to tilt it slightly because I'm not trying to make telephone poles per se. Bring it up. I'm going to grab some of the brown that's right here. Okay, now I can also grab it from over here. Switch back to my oil brush. Very loosely. Kind of throw some of that in. Grab a little bit lighter color. Throw some of that in. grab some of this light color. Now I have the indication of a bark and a branch coming off, so that works. Okay, and then I'm going to again soften it down here at the bottom. And we just kind of go up over it. Actually, I'm going to change from this one to hard wet blender. Actually, hard out smudge. Oops, a little too much. Actually, let's put this back. There we go. So I maintained my bark by putting that there and letting the stencil kind of protect some of it. Do it just a little bit more. There we go. So that pulls that, because that's darker, it pulls it a little bit further ahead of this one. Now I could do some of that with this one if I wanted to. And just kind of roughly reposition my stencil. There we go. So that gives me two trees, a little bit different from each other. Alright. Put this back for a second because I want to do something. One of the things I've noticed with my Huion is that if I am moving these stencils, it will occasionally just keep popping it right back to where it was before I did anything with it. Alright, so one thing I want to do is kind of change up some of the lighting here. So I'm going to go to Big and Subtle, and I'm going to bring this down because I want to stay within this area. Which another thing you can do with that, you can go to your polygon tool. You can do like hard freehand. So actually, not that one. This one. This lets me draw a bigger line. So if I do this, so now I have the marching ants around it. That means that if I want to take my airbrush, or any of my other brushes for that matter, and do something really big, it doesn't affect anything else around it. Okay. And this is going to be a little softer. A little softer. I really want to kind of push this one back a little bit. And Control D to deselect and move. There we go. Alright, so what's confusing about this right now is that these are too close to each other for the bottom right here. So we're just going to take the eraser. And just softly push it back. There we go. So now that gives it a perspective that it's back in the distance versus this one being up closer. Okay. All right. Now we're going to do the same for these over here and just kind of contort them and make them work as well. So Shift and Alt, Shift and Control. Put these in here. Angle it slightly. Move it up because I want some of this base right here. And my oil brush. Grab a little bit darker. Kind of making jagged strokes here. Like so. So that gives me a little bit more of that tree. And you can also, if you don't want to make it look like there's a stamp, you can flip it horizontally. Again, change the size. Yeah, I mean, and granted, in forest, you're going to have a lot of trees that are very similar. You know, so you want it to look a little similar, but at the same time, you don't want it to look like a stamp tool. So let's bring that down a little bit. Like so. Okay. Now one thing is I can invert this because this area right here I want to get. So grab a little bit darker color, change my brush size. I'm just going to paint in that area. There, don't overly care if I get outside the lines. There we go. And invert again. And we're going to grab some of this color here and put just the slightest edge lighting across some of it, like so. Okay, now this looks funky right here, but I'm going to add grasses and stuff to kind of push some of that back. Okay, and do the same here for this one. And there we go. I'm going to just hand brush in a little bit of this. And we have another tree right there. So now I can go back to that chalk brush because that gives me kind of a really soft, and just by using it on this bottom here, I can seat these trees just a little better, and then even come back over it with some of this green. And play around with some of these. And as you can see, these become, the stencils I mean, become a really quick way to kind of start laying in the foundation for what you're doing. Okay, so let me remove these real quick. So we're starting to get trees, and you can see how that's giving us depth right there. We've got a path going off back through here. You can see that there's trees off in the distance. We've got some stuff here. And so really kind of developing that middle ground and background that we need back there. Oops, I just closed the one I didn't mean to. So the layers, so I have it here, so see how that starts to refine it and shape it. Okay. All right, and then up here I'll put some, again, I'm going to build a canopy over top of it. So I want to make these a little bit more unique. So I have a couple of old limbs that are in the pack as well. So these old limbs become a really great way to start playing around. And you can take one like the other dead tree I have, so if it has a limb coming off of it, you can kind of place where you want it. So say like this limb, for example, or that limb, then I can lay this one over top of it. Same chalk brush. Just kind of lay it in, and then there we go. I'm starting, see how it just naturally flows up there? Okay. I can grab a little bit darker. Kind of vary it. And now I have a limb that's different. Okay. If I want to make this tree look like it's in front of this one, I can do the same thing. I can even use this stencil again. But then I can take and stretch it, change the angle, kind of match it up. Let me zoom in a little bit here. Kind of match it up right there. I can switch back to my selection tool. Kind of select where that is. Like so. Go back to my brush, paint it in, move it. Now you notice when I move this, it doesn't move my selection, okay, because those are two separate things. But I can Control Z to put it back. So if I want to take a look, now I've got a tree that's pushing that tree back. Okay, so I kind of like that, so I'm going to leave it. Okay, I'm also going to put just a little bit more color. Since I made this tree forward, it needs to be just a little darker than this one, so that atmospheric perspective is there. Okay, so that really pushes that one back. Let's do the same with these others. There are a couple of other trees and stuff in here, and several stencils. So like, for example, this one. Okay, I can, this one is actually, I don't know if you noticed or not, but these are not a reflection of each other. These are actually two different landscapes, so they're different. But I can turn them, change their sizes, okay. Now I'm going to put this one here, but I want it to be behind this one. So I'm going to actually make another layer below it. I'm going to take my selection tool. Kind of get an idea. Where I want it. I'm going to select the color from right here so that it matches. Like so. Okay. And then I can remove the stencil, remove this. And so I have these here, right? So all I do is I kind of just come back to here. And just kind of connect them. This is also one of those things where I suggest switching to something else like a pencil. And then you can really kind of play around with these. Okay. Like so. Just kind of come up with the pencil. Now if there's any of these I don't like, I can jump back down to there, switch to my eraser, because I think that got a little too busy and a little too jumbled, and just get rid of some of it. So it's really just a matter of playing around with these till you start getting the ones that you like and how you like it. But that gives me, starts giving me some uniqueness to these trees that otherwise would not be there. Alright. So there you go. So you can see how it kind of blends together. Then we can merge these two. So that way it's all back together on one thing. Now I've got some gnarly trees. Alright, so that shows you how to use that. Kind of get that coming across here as well. And then for this tree, I'm going to want it back behind them, so again I'm going to do the layer behind. So here's a different one. This is the water reflection one. I'm going to turn it. I'm going to stretch it. And I'm going to shrink it down. Okay. Now I'm going to use my custom brush, grab a little bit of that color. This filler to be a little mangled. Like somebody may have stepped on him when he was little. You can also use the ink. Just make sure if you do it, because it's going to give you a smoother line, that you're grabbing what's around there. It's good for giving you some clean edges. Just throwing in a couple of twigs here and there. Even do it for these limbs because I'm behind them. Like so. But again, I can use a stencil, not really what I've got it labeled for in the pack, but just in a way to make it work. I don't like this line here, so I'm going to break that up a little bit, and I'm actually going to grab one of the bush stencils that I have, drop behind this layer, grab that color, go back to my custom brush, Oops, did the right key. I'm on this bottom background layer because that's where I want it behind all these trees. Okay. Alright, so you can see where that starts adding in some depth, starts giving you some stuff going on in the background. Nice bright spot here, which I think I'm going to tone down just slightly. There we go. But now you've got all these things looking like they're dropping off in the background and kind of changing around. And we're starting to get some of the trees coming together for the background and everything else. So the next step would be to go in here and do this part, and then we'll start adding in some of the others. So I will start on that for this next one. I think this is a good place to kind of leave you to practice with this. So come in here, lay out some of what you see here, practice with the stencils for doing the different areas. You know, just scrub in your background if you're going to paint along with this, and then just kind of keep building it out from here. And that'll be part 1. And we'll come back and do part 2 here shortly.